I want to talk about blending really quick because it's a very often used tool. It can be very useful. It's very fast and easy to use. Sometimes it doesn't give the best results, but that's okay. It's all about kind of seeing what it looks like on your footage and seeing if it helps. So in this preview here, in this example, we have a shot, that static shot that I used to fix this little stitch line on in Photoshop. And with this clip here, you can see the stitch line there. There's a few other areas that are kind of off, and a really fast way to fix stuff like that, especially on a static shot like this, is just by clicking the smooth option there in the blending presets and hitting apply. And you can kind of see pretty quickly what happens to those areas. They pretty much go away. It looks, especially from a distance, to be completely fixed, and it looks straight and perfect. The only problem with smooth blending that I've found is that it really kind of just fades in and out of those two cameras. So we have camera 1 down here and camera 6 over here. Those are the two that it's probably fading out of, or maybe a little bit of 4. But what it's doing is it's just doing a really big feathering, if you will, on the edges of those cameras and kind of just fading in and out of them. And that's fine and good, especially on a static shot. It looks flawless, honestly. But with video, especially when you have people walking in between seam lines or subjects or whatever, or if the camera itself is moving, the rig itself is moving, those will become much more obvious and kind of make certain areas look a little fuzzy. And even to an untrained eye, it might look a little obvious. So I usually try to steer clear of messing with blending. I usually try to fix everything with the sharp blending preset set up, because that still is smooth, but it allows really sharp edges everywhere, so there's no fuzzy, weird looking fades going on. But that also does mean that you have harsher cuts, and those are very difficult to fix at times. So you kind of have to pick your poison. If this works for you, that's awesome. Go ahead and give it a shot, since it's just a one-click thing. It's really fast to figure out. And you can, of course, tinker with all these different settings here. And there is one more thing I want to show you with blending. There's this thing called smart cutting. And basically smart cutting does what masking does, like we've done manually, but smart cutting does it in an automatic fashion. So it kind of goes in and analyzes your image and tries to make those stitches, those cuts, happen at better spots. So we're going to go ahead and turn this to sharp here really quick. And if you remember, we can actually click edit here and open this up in AutoPano Giga so you can see better. So in AutoPano Giga, it kind of defaults at blending, obviously, as you can see. But if we hit preview, it will actually load what we have the settings are in AutoPano Video and pull it in like that. You can see that there's that stitch line. So I'm just going to open up our masking here. And now you can visualize exactly where all those stitch lines go. But you can see that there's that overlap, right, of each camera. And that's, you know, intentional so that it can have something to use to stitch with. But with masking, basically what you could do technically is come in here and you know, change things up your own way like that, and maybe that will look better, and you can hit save and see what that looks like. And that looks quite a bit better. The stitch line is now moved up to here, which might be less noticeable. We still have some issues with this one, so I guess we could come back in here and maybe scoot this over a bit and say, no, I want to keep as much of that as possible, but you know, cut from there, and we want to keep that post there as well. But we want to kind of go along the edge here of that post, kind of cutting there, so that looks a little bit better. We'll hit save and see how that looks. So that fixed our problems up there. We're having a little bit of issues there. That looks not as noticeable. Anyway, so that's masking, right? So you can do manual masks. So the thing with smart cutting is it actually allows you to, it basically does all that masking and all that manual marker adding automatically, and it tries to analyze it, you know, via all the algorithms they've written into the program to sort of analyze and figure out where all those markers should go. So as you can see, when we applied that smart cutting, it moved that stitch line up a little bit here, which looks a little bit better, maybe. You know, it's kind of hit and miss with this, because obviously anything automated can have errors, especially as much as what a human can look and see and kind of analyze themselves and see what looks normal or what doesn't. So if we go ahead and hit edit again, we can kind of see the difference that it made. So with smart cutting, you can now see that it actually did some interesting zigzag kind of jigsaw cuts throughout the entire image. So it's actually doing, it's trying harder to better analyze where to do those cuts. Instead of doing those kind of big, long, elongated seam kind of things like that, it tries to keep things a little bit more angular, as you can tell, which, you know, can be helpful and useful in certain scenarios, but you know, it might actually make it look worse in some scenarios. And from here, you can, of course, you know, continue to do any masking and do it that way. So that's kind of nice. And in the way it does it is a little bit different too. So basically with all of these, it's good to kind of experiment and see what works, what looks best for you, and we can kind of see how this updates here once it finishes loading. Now it's kind of just this little area here that sort of seems to be sticking out a little bit. But yeah, so this is blending. It gives you plenty of options to mess around with, experiment with, try, and of course, if this is faster to get you to your desired result, go ahead and do this instead of spending all that time, investing all that time in more lengthy processes. And understanding every tool that you have access to is really what helps you make those good decisions when you're editing and refining things so that you can get to your desired end result as quickly and efficiently as possible.